Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery, watching the strange lights dancing across the main screen. The lights moved in perfect patterns, like a school of fish swimming through the dark space near Kepler 442. But these were not fish, these were ships, alien ships. "How many are there?" Jake asked, his voice steady despite the excitement building in his chest. Lieutenant Amy Clark looked up from her science station. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her green eyes were bright with curiosity. "I count at least 50 vessels, Captain. Maybe more hiding behind the larger ones." Ben Parker, the communications officer, turned from his console. "Sir, they're sending some kind of signal. It's not like anything we've seen before. The patterns are complex, but they repeat every few seconds." Jake nodded. This was it. After 300 years of traveling through space, humanity had finally found someone else. Someone who could build ships and send messages. Someone who was alive and thinking. "Lisa, what's our defensive status?" Jake asked. Security Chief Lisa Grant checked her displays. Her dark skin glistened with a thin layer of sweat. "All weapons are ready, Captain. But those ships are much larger than ours. If they want to fight, we might be in trouble." Jake studied the alien fleet. The ships were beautiful in a strange way. They were smooth and curved like giant seashells floating in space. They glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed in rhythm. It almost looked like they were breathing. "Ben, can you send a response to their signal?" Jake asked. "I can try, sir. What should I say?" Jake thought for a moment. "What do you say to aliens you've never met before?" Hello seemed too simple. "We come in peace" sounded like something from an old movie. "Send them our basic greeting protocol. Mathematics, pictures of our solar system, and samples of human music." Ben's fingers moved quickly over his controls. "Message sent, Captain." They waited. The seconds felt like hours. Jake could hear the quiet hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of the computers. Amy was scanning the alien ships with every sensor they had. Lisa kept her hand near the weapons controls. Ben listened for any response to their message. Then, something amazing happened. The alien ships began to move closer, but not in an attack formation. They arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the Discovery. Their blue lights pulsed faster now, almost like they were excited. "Captain," Ben said, his voice filled with wonder. "They're responding. But it's not just one message. It's like hundreds of voices all speaking at the same time, but somehow they all say the same thing." "What are they saying?" "I think they're trying to greet us. But the translation software is having trouble. It keeps saying the same phrase over and over. 'We welcome the broken minds to our space.'" Jake frowned. "Broken minds? That doesn't sound very friendly." Amy looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm reading something very strange from their ships. The energy patterns suggest that all 50 vessels are somehow connected, like they're all parts of one giant machine." Before Jake could respond, the space in front of them began to shimmer. A new ship appeared, much larger than the others. It was shaped like a crystal with many sides that reflected the light of nearby stars. As it materialized completely, a beam of soft light reached out from the crystal ship toward the Discovery. "They want to come aboard?" Lisa said, her hand tightening on her weapon controls. "How do you know that?" Jake asked. "The light beam is scanning our docking bay. They're learning how our ship works." Jake made a decision that would change everything for humanity. "Let them come, but keep all weapons ready. Amy, I want you to lead the contact team. Take Ben with you for communications. Lisa, you come too, but keep your weapons hidden." Amy stood up, smoothing down her blue uniform. "Captain, what if they're dangerous? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But this is why we're here. This is why we left Earth and traveled so far into space. We came to find others like us." The 3 officers made their way to the docking bay. Jake stayed on the bridge, watching everything through the security cameras. The alien ship attached itself to the Discovery with surprising gentleness. The docking bay doors opened, and 3 figures stepped through. Jake had to catch his breath. The aliens were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that looked like it was made of flowing water. Their bodies changed color from blue to green to silver as they moved. Instead of hair, they had what looked like thin streams of light flowing from their heads. They had 4 arms and walked on 2 legs, but their movements were so smooth they seemed to glide across the floor. The strangest thing was their eyes. Each alien had dozens of eyes covering their face, and all the eyes blinked at exactly the same time. When they turned their heads, they moved together like they were one person with 3 bodies. Amy stepped forward, trying to look brave. "Welcome to our ship. I am Lieutenant Amy Clark. This is Ben Parker and Lisa Grant." The 3 aliens tilted their heads at exactly the same angle. When they spoke, their voices came out in perfect harmony, like a choir singing the same note. "Are Velthara of the Zephyrian Collective. We speak for all who think as one. We come to understand the broken minds that travel in metal shells." Ben activated his translation device. "I think they're calling us broken minds because we think separately from each other." The middle alien stepped closer to Amy, its dozens of eyes focused on her face. "You are the speaker for your collective, yes? You will share the thoughts of your many minds with us?" Amy looked confused. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. I speak only for myself. Captain Morrison commands our ship, but he doesn't control what I think." All 3 aliens made a sound like water flowing over rocks. Their eyes blinked rapidly, and their skin colors shifted from calm blue to alarmed orange. "This cannot be," they said together. "All thinking beings share one mind." "How do you make decisions? How do you know what is true? How do you survive the chaos of many thoughts?" Lisa stepped forward. "We talk to each other. We share ideas and then decide what to do." "But who controls the final thought? Who speaks for all?" the aliens asked. "No one controls our thoughts," Amy explained. "Each of us thinks our own thoughts. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't." The aliens moved backward, their skin now flashing bright red. Jake could see through the cameras that they were agitated. On the bridge, sensors showed that the alien ships outside were also changing color and moving in rapid, confused patterns. "You are damaged," the aliens said, their voices filled with what sounded like pity and fear. "Your minds are broken apart. How do you function? How do you live with such terrible loneliness?" Amy realized she was witnessing something incredible. These aliens didn't just work together like a team. They actually shared the same thoughts. They were like one giant brain split into many bodies. The idea of thinking alone, of having private thoughts, was completely foreign to them. "We're not lonely," Amy said gently. "We choose to share our thoughts with others. We choose to work together. But we also choose to think our own thoughts." The aliens stared at her with their many eyes. For the first time since they had arrived, they were silent. Jake could see them looking at each other, but somehow he knew they were having a conversation no human could hear. They were talking with their minds, sharing thoughts instantly across the space between them. Finally, Velthara spoke again. "You choose your thoughts? You decide what to think?" "Yes," Amy said. Don't you? "We think what the collective thinks. We know what the collective knows. We are the collective." Ben stepped forward with his translation device. "Captain Morrison would like to invite you to stay longer so we can learn about each other." The aliens looked at Ben, then at Amy, then at Lisa. Their eyes moved independently now, not blinking together as they had before. Something was changing in how they saw the humans. "We must return to the collective. We must share what we have learned about the broken minds. This changes everything we thought we knew about thinking beings." As quickly as they had arrived, the aliens returned to their ship. The crystal vessel detached from the Discovery and rejoined the fleet. But the alien ships didn't leave. They stayed in their circle, their lights pulsing in complex patterns, as they shared the incredible news of what they had discovered. On the bridge, Jake looked at his crew. Amy had returned with Ben and Lisa, and all 3 looked stunned by what they had experienced. "So what do you think?" Jake asked. "Are they friendly?" Amy sat down at her station, her mind still processing what had happened. "I think they're terrified of us, Captain. They can't understand how we can survive without sharing all our thoughts. To them, we must seem like we're insane." "But they didn't attack us," Ben pointed out. They could have destroyed our ship easily, but they chose to talk instead. Lisa checked her security readings. Their ships are still out there, but they're not in attack formation. I think they're trying to decide what to do about us. Jake nodded. Then we wait. We've made first contact with an alien species. Whatever happens next will determine the future of humanity in this galaxy. Outside the Discovery, the alien fleet continued its strange dance of lights, sharing thoughts and memories at the speed of light. And for the first time in their long history, the Zephyrian collective was experiencing something they had never known before. Uncertain. 3 days had passed since the first meeting with the Zephyrians. The alien fleet still surrounded the Discovery, their ships pulsing with soft blue lights in patterns that seemed almost like breathing. Captain Jake Morrison had barely slept during those 3 days. Every few hours, the aliens sent new messages, each one more complex than the last. Dr. Chris Williams sat across from Jake in the captain's ready room. Chris was the ship's psychologist, a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had been studying the alien communication since the first contact. They're obsessed with understanding how our minds work, Chris said, looking at the data on his tablet. Every message asks the same basic question in different ways. They want to know how we can think separately but still work together. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. What have you told them? I've tried to explain human psychology, but I don't think they understand. When I sent them information about individual decision-making, they responded with something that roughly translates to, how do you prevent the chaos of conflicting thoughts from destroying your species? Before Jake could respond, Ben Parker's voice came over the communication system. Captain Morrison to the bridge. The aliens are requesting another meeting. Jake and Chris made their way to the bridge. Amy Clark was at her science station, studying the readings from the alien ships. Lisa Grant stood at the tactical station, watching the defensive systems. Ben was at communications, listening to the incoming messages. What do they want this time? Jake asked. Ben looked up from his console. They want to send a different representative, someone they call the Prime Consciousness Node, and they want to bring our entire senior staff to their ship. Amy turned from her station. Captain, I've been analyzing their ship configurations. The large crystal ship that came before is just a small part of their main vessel. Their true ship is enormous. It's been hiding behind the others, but I can detect it now that I know what to look for. How big? Jake asked. At least 10 times the size of the largest ship we've ever built. It's like a floating city. Jake considered the invitation. Going to an alien ship was dangerous, but staying here forever wasn't an option either. Earth needed to know about this contact, and the only way to learn about the Zephyrians was to take risks. We'll go, Jake decided. But we take a full-away team. Amy, Chris, Ben, Lisa, and myself. If something goes wrong, at least the ship has Lieutenant Commander Scott to take command. 2 hours later, the 5 humans found themselves in a shuttle approaching the massive Zephyrian vessel. As they got closer, Amy gasped at what she saw through the shuttle's windows. It's beautiful, she whispered. The alien ship looked like a giant flower made of crystalline light. Thousands of smaller vessels were attached to its surface like petals, and streams of energy flowed between them in complex patterns. The entire structure pulsed with life, changing colors from deep blue to bright silver to warm gold. I'm reading over 1 million life signs on that ship, Amy reported. Maybe more. It's hard to tell because they all seem connected somehow. Their shuttle was guided into a docking bay that was larger than most Earth cities. As they stepped out, they were greeted by dozens of Zephyrians, all moving in perfect coordination. But these aliens looked different from the ones who had visited the Discovery. They were taller, and their skin showed more complex color patterns. Streams of light flowed not just from their heads, but from their arms and backs as well. One alien stepped forward from the group. This one was even taller than the others, nearly 8 feet high, and its skin was pure silver with streams of gold light flowing across its surface. When it spoke, its voice came from all the aliens present, creating a sound like a massive choir. I am Velthara Prime, the consciousness that speaks for 10 million minds. You are the broken thinkers who travel the void in metal shells. We have brought you here to understand the great sadness of your condition. Chris stepped forward. We appreciate your invitation. I am Dr. Chris Williams. We're honored to learn about your people. You are the healer of minds, yes? The one who tries to repair the damage that separates thought from thought? Chris looked confused. I help people with emotional problems, but I don't consider individual thinking to be damage. All the aliens in the docking bay tilted their heads at the same angle. Their many eyes blinked in perfect unison. But surely you see the pain of isolation? The terror of being alone inside one small mind? How do you bear the weight of solitary thought? Amy spoke up. We don't feel isolated. We choose to share our thoughts with others when we want to. Choose? The words seemed to ripple through the crowd of aliens like a wave. You choose what to think? Yes, Jake said. Each of us decides what we believe, what we want, what we think is right or wrong. The aliens moved backward as one, their skin flashing bright red. The prime consciousness made a sound like rushing water. This is the source of your brokenness. Choice creates chaos. Choice creates conflict. Choice creates suffering. Ben activated his translation device and spoke carefully. But choice also creates new ideas. When we disagree, we learn new things. When we think differently, we solve problems in ways that no one person could solve alone. Impossible, the prime consciousness replied. Truth is singular, reality is one. There cannot be multiple correct thoughts about the same thing. Lisa, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. What happens when your people face a problem they've never seen before? How do you find new solutions? The collective considers all known information and selects the optimal response. But what if the optimal response doesn't exist in your known information? What if you need to create something completely new? For the first time since the humans had arrived, the aliens were silent. The prime consciousness stared at Lisa with dozens of unblinking eyes. The other aliens stood perfectly still, their skin colors shifting through confused patterns of purple and orange. Chris realized what was happening. They've never had to innovate. When everyone thinks the same thoughts, no one creates new ideas. The prime consciousness finally spoke, but its voice was quieter now, less certain. New ideas come from the natural growth of the collective's knowledge. As we encounter new information, our understanding expands. But that's just adding to what you already know, Amy said. True innovation comes from looking at the same information in a completely different way. It comes from individual creativity. Jake watched the aliens carefully. Their perfect coordination was starting to break down. Some of them were moving slightly out of sync with the others. Their skin colors were showing individual variations instead of the uniform patterns they had displayed before. Your presence disturbs the harmony of thought, the prime consciousness said, but there was something new in its voice. Curiosity maybe, or even wonder. The younger nodes are beginning to form questions that do not come from the collective's knowledge. Questions are good, Chris said gently. Questions lead to discoveries. Questions lead to chaos. The prime consciousness replied, but it sounded less sure than before. Ben noticed something on his translation device. Captain, I'm picking up multiple communication streams now. Before, all the aliens were broadcasting the same signal. Now I'm detecting slight variations. It's like some of them are starting to think different thoughts. The prime consciousness heard this and made a sound like breaking glass. This cannot continue. The broken thinkers must be removed before they damage more nodes. The collective must remain pure. Wait, Amy said quickly. We don't want to hurt your people. We just want to understand each other. Understanding requires change. Change destroys perfection. The collective has been perfect for 10,000 years. Jake saw an opportunity. But has it been growing? Has it been learning? Or has it been the same for all those 10,000 years? The aliens around them began to move restlessly. Some of them were looking at each other instead of focusing on the humans. Their movements were becoming less coordinated, less perfect. The collective grows through the addition of new minds, the prime consciousness said. When young Zephyrians reach maturity, they join the shared thought and add their strength to ours. But what if a young Zephyrian had a new idea? Lisa asked. What if they thought of something the collective had never considered? Impossible. Young minds contain no knowledge that the collective does not possess. Chris stepped closer to the prime consciousness. That's exactly the problem. You're not allowing for the possibility that a young mind might see things differently, might make connections that the older minds never considered. The prime consciousness was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the other aliens were beginning to show more individual behaviors. Some were examining the humans more closely. Others were looking at each other with what appeared to be curiosity. You are suggesting that the imperfection of individual thought is actually strength? We're suggesting that diversity of thought leads to better solutions, Jake said. When our crew faces a problem, we bring together different perspectives. Amy looks at it from a scientific angle. Ben considers communication aspects. Lisa thinks about security. Chris examines the psychological factors, and I try to coordinate all their different ideas into a plan. And this works? It's how we built our ships. It's how we traveled across. 2 weeks had passed since the humans had proposed their solution to save the Zephyrian homeworld. Captain Jake Morrison stood in his quarters aboard the Discovery, looking out at the massive alien fleet that now surrounded them. But something was different. The perfect formations were breaking apart. Some ships moved in small groups while others floated alone. The synchronized pulsing of their lights had become irregular, chaotic. Lieutenant Amy Clark knocked on his door. Captain, you need to see what's happening on the alien ship. They made their way to the bridge where Dr. Chris Williams was monitoring communications with the Zephyrians. His face showed deep concern. Captain, I think we may have caused something terrible, Chris said. The collective is falling apart. Ben Parker looked up from his communication station. The aliens are sending hundreds of different messages now. Before they spoke with one voice. Now it's like listening to a crowd where everyone is talking at once. What are they saying? Jake asked. Some are asking questions about individual choice. Others are demanding that the questioning stop. And some are reporting that younger Zephyrians are refusing to join the collective when they reach maturity. Lisa. Grant checked her tactical readings. Captain, some of their ships are moving away from the main fleet. I think they're leaving on their own. Jake realized what was happening. By showing the Zephyrians that individual thinking could solve problems, they had planted seeds of doubt in minds that had never questioned anything before. The perfect unity of the collective was cracking. Get me a communication link to Velthara Prime, Jake ordered. The main screen flickered and the image of the Prime consciousness appeared. But it looked different now. Its silver skin was flickering between colors, and the streams of light flowing from its head were chaotic and dim. Human Morrison, it said, and its voice sounded tired. Your broken minds have broken ours. The collective is experiencing the first internal conflict in 10,000 years. We never intended to cause harm, Jake said. We only wanted to help save your world. Help? The prime consciousness made a sound like grinding metal. You have shown our young ones that they can refuse to join the shared thought. You have made them believe that isolation is preferable to unity. 3,000 young minds have already left the collective. Amy stepped forward. Where did they go? They have taken ships and fled to the outer systems. They call themselves the Free Minds. They refuse to share their thoughts with the collective. They are lost to us forever. Chris studied the alien on the screen. Velthara Prime, what did the young ones say about why they left? They speak of wanting to think their own thoughts. They say they wish to discover new things without the collective's knowledge guiding them. They claim that individual experience is more valuable than shared wisdom. Jake could see the pain in the aliens' many eyes. Are they wrong? The prime consciousness was silent for a long moment. We do not know. This question has never existed before. Some nodes believe the young ones are damaged. Others begin to wonder if the young ones have found something we have lost. What do you mean? Amy asked. 10,000 years ago, when the collective was young, We created new technologies, new art, new ways of understanding the universe. But as the collective grew larger and more perfect, the creation of new things became rare. We assumed this was because we had achieved optimal knowledge. Now we wonder if we simply lost the ability to think new thoughts. Ben's translation device picked up something from the alien communication channels. "Captain, I'm detecting a message from the group that left the collective. They're calling themselves the Free Mind Alliance and they want to meet with us." "Put them through," Jake ordered. The screen split, showing both Velthera Prime and a group of younger-looking Zephyrians. These aliens were smaller than the Prime consciousness, and their skin showed brighter, more varied colors. The streams of light from their heads moved independently, instead of in perfect harmony. One of the young aliens stepped forward. "I am the one who chooses to be called Kyle, after the human naming custom. We are the minds that have chosen freedom over safety." Velthara Prime's skin flashed angry red. "You are the minds that have chosen chaos over wisdom. Kyle who abandons unity." Kyle's skin showed calm blue patterns. "We are the minds that choose to learn through experience rather than inherited knowledge. Velthera who fears change." Jake realized he was watching the first argument in Zephyrian history. "Kyle, what do you and your people want?" "We want to learn from the humans. We want to understand how individual minds can work together without losing their independence. And we want to help save our homeworld using the human solution." "Impossible," Velthera Prime said. "The solution requires precise coordination. Individual minds cannot achieve the accuracy needed." Kyle's eyes flickered with something that looked like determination. "Then let us prove you wrong. Give us ships and let us attempt the deflection of the death rock." Amy looked at Jake. "Captain, the asteroid is still approaching their planet. We're running out of time to test any solution." Chris stepped closer to the screen. "Velthera Prime, what happens if you do nothing? Our world dies in 31 days. And what happens if you let Kyle and the Free Minds try their solution? They will fail, and our world still dies. But they will also die with it." Kyle's skin showed patterns of gold and silver. "We accept that risk. Individual choice includes the choice to risk our lives for our people." Jake made a decision that would change both species forever. "We'll help. The discovery will work with both groups. Maybe together we can find a solution that saves everyone." Over the next week, Jake watched something amazing happen. The Free Mind Alliance began working with human engineers to plan the asteroid deflection. But instead of the chaotic failure that Velthara Prime predicted, something else emerged. The young Zephyrians learned to coordinate their actions while maintaining their individual thoughts. Maya Davis, the Discovery's chief engineer, worked closely with Kyle and his people. "They're incredible," she told Jake. "Each one takes responsibility for a different part of the plan. But instead of sharing one mind, they share information and trust each other to do their jobs." Meanwhile, the main collective struggled with internal conflicts. Some older nodes demanded that the Free Minds be forced to return. Others began to question whether the collective's way was the only correct path. Ambassador Rick Johnson, who had joined the Discovery from Earth's diplomatic corps, worked with both groups. "Captain, I think we're seeing the birth of a new kind of civilization. The collective is learning that they can maintain unity without forcing conformity. And the Free Minds are learning that independence doesn't mean isolation." But not everyone was happy with these changes. Jake received an urgent message from Ben Parker while he was in his quarters reviewing the deflection plans. "Captain, we have a problem. A faction of the collective has decided that the Free Minds are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They're calling themselves the Purity Guardians, and they want to destroy any ship that has left the collective." Jake rushed to the bridge where Amy was studying sensor readings. "Captain, I'm detecting a large group of collective ships moving toward the Free Mind Alliance's position. They're armed and moving in attack formation. On the main screen, they could see Zephyrian ships facing each other in space. For the first time in their history, the aliens were preparing for war. But this wasn't a war against an outside enemy. This was a civil war between two different ideas of what it meant to be conscious. Lisa Grant checked her weapon systems. Captain, if fighting breaks out, we could be caught in the middle. Our ship is much smaller than theirs. Jake studied the tactical display. The Purity Guardians had surrounded the Free Mind Alliance ships. The younger aliens were outnumbered, 10-1. Open a channel to both groups, Jake ordered. The screen showed Kyle and his allies on one side, and a new Zephyrian commander on the other. This alien was even larger than Vel Thera Prime, with skin that was pure black and streams of red light flowing from its head. I am Zarvex, Guardian of Collective Purity, the large alien announced. The contamination of individual thought ends now. The broken minds will be cleansed, and unity will be restored. Kyle's skin showed patterns of defiance mixed with fear. We have done nothing wrong. We have chosen our own path. Choice is the enemy of perfection, Zarvex replied. Choice leads to conflict. Choice leads to suffering. Choice leads to the death of civilizations. Jake stepped forward. Zarvex, your people came to us asking for help to save your world. Fighting each other won't solve that problem. The world's destruction is preferable to the corruption of the collective. Better to die in purity than to live in chaos, Amy gasped. Captain, they're willing to let their entire planet die rather than accept that individual thinking might be valid. Chris understood what they were facing. This isn't just about solving the asteroid problem anymore. This is about whether an entire species will evolve or destroy itself trying to prevent change. On the screen, Zarvex raised one of its forearms. Purity Guardians, prepare to cleanse the contaminated minds, restore the collective to its perfect state. Kyle's ships began to scatter, but they were heavily outnumbered. The young Zephyrians had learned individual thinking, but they hadn't learned how. The space around the Discovery erupted in brilliant flashes of light as Zephyrian ships fired on each other for the first time in their history. Captain Jake Morrison watched the battle unfold on his main screen, knowing that every shot fired was changing their civilization forever. Lisa, target the Purity Guardian ships that are attacking the smaller Free Mind vessels, Jake ordered. Captain, their shields are much stronger than ours, Lisa Grant replied from her tactical station. Our weapons barely scratch their hull plating. Amy Clark looked up from her science station. But Captain, I'm reading something interesting. The Purity Guardian ships are all firing in perfect coordination. They're still thinking as one mind, which makes their attack patterns predictable. Jake smiled. Then we use that against them. Ben, send a message to Kyle and his people. Tell them to break formation and attack from random directions. Ben Parker worked quickly at his communications console. Message sent, Captain. Kyle acknowledges and says they understand. On the screen, they watched as the Free Mind Alliance ships suddenly scattered in all directions. Instead of moving in the organized patterns typical of Zephyrian warfare, each ship chose its own path. Some went high, others went low. Some spun in spirals while others charged straight ahead. The Purity Guardians, still thinking with one shared mind, couldn't adapt fast enough to the chaos. Their perfectly coordinated weapons fire began missing targets as the Free Mind ships moved in ways the collective had never imagined. Dr. Chris Williams studied the battle through the ship's sensors. Jake, look at this. The Free Mind ships aren't just moving randomly. Each pilot is making independent decisions, but they're still supporting each other. It's like watching a jazz band where everyone plays their own music but somehow creates harmony. Lieutenant Commander Scott, who had been monitoring communications, turned to Jake. Captain, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Tony Rodriguez wants to speak with you immediately. The main screen split to show Admiral Rodriguez, a stern-faced man with gray hair and sharp eyes. Captain Morrison, what's your status? We've been monitoring unusual energy readings from your position. Admiral, we're in the middle of a civil war between two factions of an alien species. One side wants to preserve their hive mind thinking. The other wants to learn individual consciousness. And which side are you supporting? The individuals, sir. They're fighting for the right to think their own thoughts. Admiral Rodriguez nodded. Understood. Captain, I'm sending you additional support. The fleet will arrive in 6 hours, but Morrison, be careful. Earth's government is very interested in these aliens and their technology. Don't make any promises we can't keep." The transmission ended, and Jake turned back to the battle. The Free Mind Alliance was holding its own, but they were still outnumbered. Worse, the asteroid threatening their homeworld was getting closer every day. Maya Davis, the chief engineer, had been working with Kyle's people to plan the asteroid deflection. She approached Jake with a worried expression. "Captain, we have a problem. The battle is using up ships and energy we need for the asteroid mission. If this fighting continues much longer, there won't be enough ships left to attempt the deflection." Jake realized they were facing a terrible choice. Help the Free Minds win the war, or let them lose quickly so they could focus on saving the planet. Either way, people would die. "Ben, open a channel to all ships in the battle area." The communications officer worked his controls. "Channel open, Captain." "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Discovery. I'm speaking to all Zephyrian forces, both collective and free mind. While you're fighting each other, your homeworld is dying. In 23 days, that asteroid will impact your planet and kill billions of your people. We can save your world, but only if we work together." Zarvex's massive form appeared on the screen, his black skin pulsing with angry red patterns. "The contaminated minds have poisoned you as well, human. The collective will not work with the broken thinkers. Purity or death." Kyle's image appeared next to Zarvex. "Captain Morrison speaks wisdom. Our people's survival is more important than our disagreements about consciousness. There can be no survival with contaminated minds," Zarvex replied. "Better that our species dies pure than lives corrupted." Jake stared at the alien commander. "You're willing to let an entire world die because some of your people want to think for themselves?" "Correct. Individual thought leads to chaos. Chaos leads to suffering. Suffering is worse than death." Amy was studying her sensors when she suddenly gasped. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups on the Purity Guardian ships. They're preparing to fire on the asteroid." "What?" Jake turned to her. "Why would they attack the asteroid?" Chris understood first. "They're going to try to break it apart. If they can't deflect it safely, they'll shatter it into smaller pieces that will still hit their planet but cause even more damage." Kyle's skin flashed with patterns of horror. "Zarvex, you cannot do this. The fragments will spread across the entire planet. Instead of one impact site, there will be thousands. Then the contamination will die quickly instead of slowly." Zarvex replied coldly. Jake realized he was watching genocide. Zarvex would rather destroy his own species than allow individual thinking to exist. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison. We're moving to protect the asteroid." Lisa looked at him in confusion. "Captain, did you just order us to protect the thing that's going to destroy their planet?" "Yes, because if Zarvex breaks it apart, he'll turn one problem into 1,000 problems." The Discovery moved between the Purity Guardian fleet and the asteroid. It was a tiny ship compared to the massive alien vessels, but Jake hoped it would be enough to make Zarvex hesitate. "Human ship, move away or be destroyed," Zarvex commanded. "I don't think so," Jake replied. "Ben, send a message to the Free Mind Alliance. Tell them we need their help to protect the asteroid until our reinforcements arrive." The next few hours were the longest of Jake's life. The Discovery and the Free Mind ships played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the Purity Guardians. They couldn't win in direct combat, but they could use their unpredictable movement patterns to stay between the Guardians and the asteroid. Maya worked frantically with Kyle's engineers to prepare the deflection plan. "Captain, we can do this," she reported, "but we need precise timing and coordination between dozens of ships, and we need the collective's help, even if it's just some of them." "What do you mean?" "The deflection requires more gravitational manipulation than the Free Mind ships can generate alone. We need at least some of the larger collective vessels." Jake looked at the tactical display. The battle was still raging with no sign that either side was willing to compromise. "Ben, get me a private channel to Velthara Prime, the original." Zephyrian representative appeared on the screen. Its silver skin looked duller than before, and the light streams from its head were dim and flickering. "Captain Morrison, the collective is dying. Half our ships follow Zarvex toward purity through destruction. The other half begin to question everything we have believed for 10,000 years. Velthara Prime, we can save your world, but we need ships from all factions working together. Impossible. Zarvex will never cooperate with the contaminated mines, and Kyle's people no longer trust the collective. Chris stepped forward. What if there was a third option? What if some of your people chose a middle path? Explain. What if some Zephyrians chose to remain connected to the collective but also allowed individual thoughts? What if you could be both unified and diverse at the same time? Velthara Prime was quiet for a long moment. You speak of something that has never existed. How can a mind be both individual and collective? Amy had an idea. What about human families? We're individuals, but we also share deep connections with people we love. We don't share thoughts, but we share emotions, goals, and values. This is possible? Jake nodded. It's how humans have always lived. We choose our connections. We choose who to trust, who to work with, who to love. But we never give up our right to think our own thoughts. Velthara Prime's skin began to show new patterns, colors that shifted between the silver of the collective and the bright hues of the free minds. Perhaps there is wisdom in choosing connection rather than having it forced upon us. Suddenly, Ben's console erupted with activity. Captain, I'm receiving hundreds of new signals. Ships are breaking away from both the Purity Guardians and the main collective. They're forming a new group. On the screen, they could see Zephyrian ships moving into a loose formation between the two warring factions. These ships showed mixed color patterns. Neither the pure silver of the collective nor the chaotic brightness of the free minds. I am Velthara Prime, came a new voice over the communications. I speak for those who choose the path between absolute unity and absolute independence. We are the chosen collective. We share what we choose to share, and we keep private what we choose to keep private. Kyle's image appeared alongside Velthara Prime. And I speak for the Free Mind Alliance. We choose to work with the chosen collective, to save our world. Zarvex's face filled the screen, his skin now pure black with streams of blood-red light. Traitors all, you will die with the contaminated mines. The asteroid filled the view screen of the Discovery like a glowing mountain of death. Captain Jake Morrison could see the radiation streaming from its surface in deadly ribbons of light. In 12 hours, it would impact the Zephyrian homeworld and end a civilization that had existed for thousands of years. Status report, Jake called out to his bridge crew. Amy Clark looked up from her science station. The deflection fleet is in position, Captain. We have 47 ships from the Free Mind Alliance, 36 from the Chosen Collective, and surprisingly, 12 ships from the original collective that broke away from Zarvex. Ben Parker monitored the communications between the alien vessels. Captain, they're having trouble coordinating. The Free Minds want to act immediately. The Chosen Collective wants more planning time. And the original collective ships are waiting for unified orders that aren't coming. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. 3 different groups, 3 different ways of thinking, and only one chance to save a world. Ben, patch me through to all fleet commanders. The main screen split into 3 sections. Kyle appeared representing the Free Mind Alliance, his skin bright with eager energy. Velthara Prime showed the mixed patterns of the Chosen Collective. And to everyone's surprise, a new figure appeared for the traditional collective ships. I am Kethnara, the new alien said. Its skin was silver-like, the old collective, but dimmer, uncertain. I speak for the ships that refuse to follow Zarvex's path of destruction. We wish to save our world, even if it means working with individual minds. Kyle spoke first. Captain Morrison, the Free Minds are ready to begin the deflection sequence. Each of our ships knows its position and timing. Velthara Prime's multiple voices harmonized as it spoke. The Chosen Collective requests more coordination time. We prefer to blend individual initiative with group planning. Kethnara remained silent, its many eyes looking between the other commanders. The remaining collective nodes await guidance. We are accustomed to unified command, but Zarvex has abandoned us. Maya Davis, monitoring the engineering aspects from her station, turned to Jake. Captain, we're running out of time. The gravitational forces need to be applied in exactly the right sequence, or the asteroid will shatter instead of deflecting. Jake, made the decision that would determine the fate of both species. We're going to do this the human way. Each group will contribute what they do best. Kyle, your free mind ships will take the lead positions. You're good at quick decisions and rapid movement. Velthara Prime, your chosen collective will coordinate the middle positions. You can balance planning with action. Kethnara, your traditional ships will anchor the formation. You're strongest when you have clear instructions to follow. Doctor, Chris Williams stepped forward. Captain, what about Zarvex? His ships are still out there. As if summoned by Chris's words, the space around them suddenly filled with the dark ships of the Purity Guardians. Zarvex's massive vessel emerged from behind the asteroid, its black hull absorbing light like a hole in space. The contamination ends now, Zarvex announced, his voice carrying across all communication channels. I will destroy the deflection fleet and allow the asteroid to cleanse our world of impure thoughts. Lisa Grant checked her tactical sensors. Captain, he has 28 ships. They're moving to attack positions. Jake realized that Zarvex had been waiting for this moment. The Purity Guardian commander wanted to ensure that if the planet died, it would die purely, without the contamination of individual thinking. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. Jake broadcast. Begin deflection sequence immediately. Ignore the Purity Guardians and focus on saving the world. What happened next was unlike anything seen before in the galaxy. 3 different types of consciousness worked together to accomplish what none could do alone. Kyle's free mind ships darted around the asteroid like swift dancers, each pilot making split-second decisions about where to position their gravitational generators. They moved with beautiful chaos, but somehow their individual actions created a coordinated effect. Velthara Prime's chosen collective ships took their positions with careful precision. Each ship maintained its individual identity, but shared key information with the others. They achieved coordination without losing the creativity that came from diverse thinking. Kethnara's traditional collective ships provided the steady anchor points. Following Jake's clear instructions, they maintained perfect positions and timing, giving the more flexible ships a stable foundation to work from. Meanwhile, Zarvex's Purity Guardians attacked with desperate fury, but their rigid thinking patterns made them predictable. The free mind ships dodged their weapons fire with unpredictable movements. The chosen collective ships coordinated defensive patterns that confused the attackers. Even Kethnara's traditional ships proved surprisingly effective when they followed Jake's tactical suggestions instead of Zarvex's outdated strategies. Amy watched her instruments as the gravitational forces began to build around the asteroid. Captain, it's working. The asteroid's trajectory is starting to change. But the deflection was slow, and the asteroid was so close to the planet that even a small change might not be enough. We need more power, Maya reported from engineering. The gravitational generators are at maximum, but the asteroid is too massive. Jake studied the tactical display. Then he had an idea that was completely insane and absolutely human. Ben, open a channel to Zarvex, the Purity Guardian commander's face appeared on the screen, his skin now pure black with streams of angry red light. You have failed, human. The asteroid will impact in 6 hours. My ships will ensure that no contaminated minds survive to corrupt future generations. Zarvex, look at your planet, Jake said calmly. The screen shifted to show the Zephyrian homeworld. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents swirled with white clouds. Cities glowed like jewels across the surface. Jake could see the orbital stations where billions of Zephyrians lived and worked. All of those people will die in 6 hours, Jake continued. Every mind, pure or contaminated, will be destroyed. Every memory, every experience, every thought your species has ever had will be lost forever. Zarvex stared at the image of his world. For the first time since the crisis began, his skin showed colors other than black and red. Flickers of blue appeared, the traditional Zephyrian color of sadness. The contamination must be stopped, Zarvex said, but his voice was quieter now. What if there was another way? Chris Williams stepped into view of the communications pickup. What if the pure minds and the contaminated minds never had to interact? What if your people could live separately but peacefully? Kyle joined the conversation. The free minds have no desire to force others to think as we do. We only want the freedom to think for ourselves. Velthara Prime added, "The chosen collective seeks harmony between all forms of consciousness. There is room in the galaxy for many kinds of thinking." Kethnara spoke last. "Even the traditional collective has learned that rigid thinking nearly destroyed our world. Perhaps some flexibility is not contamination but wisdom." Zarvex looked at each speaker in turn. His black skin slowly began to show other colors, blue for sadness, purple for confusion, and finally, a faint glimmer of silver for hope. "What do you propose, Human Morrison?" Jake took a deep breath. "Help us save your world. Add your ship's gravitational generators to the deflection effort. After the crisis is over, your people can choose their own paths. Some can remain purely collective. Others can explore individual thinking. And some can find a middle way." For a long moment, Zarvex said nothing. His many eyes stared at the image of his dying world. The asteroid was now visible from the planet's surface, a growing point of deadly light in their sky. Finally, Zarvex spoke. "Purity Guardian Fleet, add your gravitational output to the deflection pattern. Preserve the world so that consciousness in all its forms may continue." The combined gravitational force of nearly 100 ships struck the asteroid like an invisible hammer. Jake watched the sensors as the massive rock gradually began to change course. The calculations were incredibly close. Every ship had to maintain perfect positioning. Every gravitational generator had to operate at exactly the right frequency. Amy called out readings as the minutes ticked by. Deflection increasing, trajectory changing, impact probability decreasing. The asteroid passed by the Zephyrian homeworld, with less than 1,000 kilometers to spare. The gravitational forces that would have destroyed a planet instead pulled it into a new orbit around the system's star, where it would become a new moon, harmless and even beautiful. On the planet's surface, billions of Zephyrians watched their new moon rise in the sky. Some saw it as a symbol of their traditional collective strength. Others saw it as proof that individual thinking could solve impossible problems. And many saw it as evidence that different kinds of consciousness could work together to create miracles. 5 years later, Captain Jake Morrison, now an admiral, stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony. Beside him was Captain Kyle of the free-mind vessel Independence and Captain Velthara of the chosen collective ship Unity. Even Zarvex was there, commanding the traditional collective vessel Purity, though his understanding of purity had evolved to include the pure intention to preserve life rather than destroy.